أجمعين وبائث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد، وعلى آل رسوله المختار الأبرار الأطهار، سيما على الحسين المظلوم المقتول المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ، الذي غسله دمعه وكفنه رماه، وكفنه رمال كربلاء. يا ليتنا كنا معك فنفوز فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب. صلوات.
A very humble request just from the beginning. It is very difficult for any speaker to speak when there's distractions, and I don't know what's happened today. Most of the people have come in during the last 2 minutes, 3 minutes. If we could just move forward slightly so that there's not disturbance afterwards, and if inshallah we could make sure that our children are quiet so I can concentrate inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you very much. Derived from this verse of the Holy Quran is a very important message. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يُعَذِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, that whoever respects and reveres these symbols and signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is an indication of the piety of their hearts. In other words, those individuals that respect this sha'air, these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this means that piety and taqwa is found within their hearts. We understand that sha'air means any symbol which brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Arabic language, you'll find many different words which denote the meaning of sign or symbol. For example, we have the word ayah. Ayah, as we know, means sign. And the word ayah refers to the sign which requires pondering and thought, which is why verses of the Quran are called ayah. They mean signs of Allah. However, because they require ponder and thought and tadabbur, they are called ayah. The second type of word is known as alamat. Alamat refers to those signs which are so clear and are manifest to every single individual that they do not require any pondering. For example, when we talk about the signs of the reappearance of the 12th Imam salamullahi alayhi, we mention we say alamatul dhuhur, because these signs are so open and manifest and clear, they don't require any external pondering or thinking. They're so clear signs. The third type is sha'air. The Quran mentions in Safar wal Marwa min sha'air Allah, that the mountains Safa and Marwa are of the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are told by linguists, experts of the Quran and experts of language of the Quran, that sha'air or the symbols refer to anything which brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whether it be Safa or Marwa, they remind us of Allah. They turn our hearts towards Allah, whether it be the holy Kaaba, whether it be Makkah and Medina, or the greatest sha'air of Allah, the greatest symbol of Allah, the shrine of Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi. And today we want to look at the visitation of the shrine, because there are many questions that arise. Number one, why is it that we commemorate Arba'in? Why is it after 40 days we commemorate? Why not 30? Why not 20? Why not 15? Why not 50? What is the reason for 40? And why is there so much emphasis put on the ziyarah of Imam Hussein after 40 days? Number two, we want to look at the philosophy behind actually visiting the Imam. So going to Karbala and doing his ziyarah. Number three, we want to look at the ziyarah which we do while reciting the supplication. So reciting ziyarah to Ashura and Arba'een, etc., which we inshallah will do tomorrow. And number four, we want to look at the fadila, the excellency of visiting Imam Hussein. There is a hadith in volume 10 of Bihar al-Anwar, quoted from Bibi Salama salamullahi alayha on the authority of Aisha, who says that I entered into the room and I saw the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was present. And in his lap was his grandson Hussein. He was kissing Hussein, hugging Hussein, showing a lot of love and affection for his grandson. Aisha said, Ya Allah, so much love for Hussein, so much affection and infatuation. The Holy Prophet of Islam says, no, forget about Imam Hussein, forget about my son Hussein. I will give my love to any individual who visits the shrine of my son Hussein. Then he says, not only that, I will pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that individual who visits my son Hussein in Karbala the thawab of one of my hajj. In other words, the thawab that I gain for doing one hajj, that thawab will be given to that individual who visits my grandson Hussein. She says, one hajj? He says, no, two hajj. Two hajj, no, three hajj. Three hajj, no, four hajj. It increases until he says 90 hajj. The thawab of 90 hajj is given to that individual who visits Imam Hussein. Whose hajj? The hajj of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And so we find that visiting Imam Hussein's shrine is one of the most greatest acts that we can do as part of ibadah. In fact, when I am asked by individuals, I have many sins, how can I release my sins? I say, visit Imam Hussein in Karbala. The first question or the first area we want to delve into is why 40? Why is it that it is after 40 days that we commemorate this Arba'een, this Jahlum? The question is a very good one. When we look at the narrations, you find several narrations, several indications to the number 40. The number 40 can be seen throughout all of our narrations and ibadat. For example, if I have a special hajat, if I have a special dua I want to be answered, I do a certain thing for 40 days. Why? In fact, we are told that when Nabi Adam salamullah alayhi was being created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Jibreel, O Jibreel, go onto the earth, get all of these different types of clay and soil. So Jibreel goes, he takes hard soil, soft soil, sticky clay, wet clay, dry clay, dark clay, very light clay, and he mashes them up all together. And they start mixing this clay. According to ahadith, the clay and the soil that Nabi Adam was created from fermented for 40 days. And so this soil developed after 40 days, which is why also our spiritual development is done in sets of 40. For example, the ulama say, I, as an individual, want to ensure that I do Salatul Layl for the rest of my life. If I continue Salatul Layl for 40 days continuously, I will never leave Salatul Layl until I pass away. Because I have done this thing for 40 days, therefore I have elevated myself one stage spiritually. And so when I want to change myself spiritually, I do certain acts for 40 days. We understand that during the 1st to the 10th of Muharram, every single believer is in a state of shock and trauma. In the way that Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, Imam Sajjad salamullahi alayha, salamullahi alayhi, Sayyidah Sakina salamullahi alayha, etc. They were in a state of shock and trauma. That Imam Hussein, the great leader, the head of the family, has been killed. This state of shock that they were in, we are also in during the 1st to the 10th of Muharram. We are in a state of such immense grief and misery. It takes us 40 days to process this grief. In the way that it took Nabi Adam's clay to take 40 days to process, it takes us 40 days to process this grief. And so on Arba'een, our grief has changed one stage. From intense trauma, shock, intense misery, intense sorrow, it has changed where we are at a state where we are sorrowful, where we are sad. However, we are ready to give our condolences to the mother of Imam Hussein. So it takes 40 days for us to process this in the way that it took 40 days. And in fact, we'll also talk about the way, inshallah, tomorrow we'll talk very briefly before the lecture, because tomorrow we'll have Masa'ib only. But before that, a short introduction we'll have tomorrow about whether it was 40 days or 1 year and 40. However, we understand our grief takes 40 days to develop. Not only that, if you look at the narrations, number one, the angels cried for 40 days on the death of Imam Hussein. Number two, the skies wept for 40 days on the death of Imam Hussein. Number three, Adam, salamullah alayhi, cried for 40 days on the death of Habil. Number four, Nabi Yaqub, salamullah alayhi, cried for 40 years. The number 40 is still there. Cried for 40 years on the loss of Nabi Yusuf. In this way, we find that 40 is very important because it relates to our spiritual development. When our grief changes into a system of transition to the second stage, we also find people ask a question. Why is it that Sayyida Zainab, salamullahi alayha, was not the first? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did injustice, some people say, because the sister should have been first to visit the brother. As we know, the first individual ever to be a zawar of Imam Hussein was who? Hazrat Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. Why? And she got there a few minutes after him. In other words, he had reached Karbala a few minutes before her. The answer is given by ulama. It's a beautiful answer. It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensured that the first visitor of Imam Hussein's shrine would be a companion that was respected by all different madahib. So that those individuals that say we follow the sunnah of the sahabi and the companions, they cannot point a finger at visiting the shrine of Imam Hussein. For the first person to visit the shrine of Imam Hussein was a companion. So if someone says we follow the companions, our Sunni brothers, they say they follow the companions, the first person to visit Imam Hussein was a companion. So they can't say this is bid'ah, this is innovation, because they also believe in the companions. And Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, it was said, Abu Bakr had said, Jabir only requires one witness. As we know, we require two witnesses in fiqh, as I mentioned in the past. They say if it's Jabir, only one is required. In other words, the fact that Jabir visited Imam Hussein meant all of the madahib, Sunni and Shia, non-Muslim and Muslim, every single person should be able to and should be allowed to, it should be permissible for every single person to visit Imam Hussein's shrine. This is why we understand 40. For 40 is a very interesting number. Nabi Musa was called onto Mount Tur for how many days? 40. Why? Because 40 indicates spiritual development and change. It indicates the end of transition. And so tomorrow it will be the end of our transition from a state of intense grief to a state where we are ready to recite the ziyarah of Imam Hussein and give our condolences to Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. The second area that we said we'll discuss is the actual physical visitation of the shrine. In other words, unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are unlucky. We are stuck here in South London when, mashallah, millions, I don't know how many numbers it is this year, I'm sure it will top last year, millions are visiting the shrine of Imam Hussein in Karbala. A question, however, is asked. Ayatollah Dastaghi Shirazi rahmatullah alayhi, as I mentioned before, read many of his books. His books are there. His books are for people of all different ages and levels. Ayatollah Dastaghi, in one of his tafasir, mentions, he says, is it not true that the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is everywhere? The Quran says, whatever you do, فَسَيَرَ Allah. Allah will see your actions, so will the Rasul, so will the mu'mineen. In other words, I am at my house, I am doing a certain thing, Allah is watching me, the Prophet is watching me, the mu'mineen, in other words, Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam are watching me. Ayatollah Dastaghi says, is it not true that the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is everywhere? In other words, here, the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is mawjood, is present. It's true, he says it's true. Why is it then that we have to go all the way to Karbala? If the spirit is here, we at Hyderi, we could sit in a circle or a square, we could do masa'ib or something, then we could touch, and we could say, look, the spirit is here, so we're doing ziyarah. Why is it that we have to go all the way there? In fact, someone once told me that he went on a ziyarah trip. He said there was an old man. Now, of course, this man didn't have ma'rifah. The old man was also very tired from traveling all the way from London to Iraq. He says, why could not Imam Hussein be buried in London? So I could just go out the door, maybe 20 minutes drive, come back home. He doesn't have ma'rifah that every single second I spend going to the shrine of Imam Hussein is not counted in my life. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shabbar, you will pass away at the age of 50 maybe. If it takes me 1 month, from London to Karbala, I go a very long way, that 1 month will not be counted in my life. In other words, I will die 50 years and 1 month. This is the maqam of going to Imam Hussein. Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi, Rahmatullah alayhi, says, if the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is everywhere, why is it then that we have to go to their shrine? I can sit in my sitting room and say, Ya Aba Abdullah, and get the thawab. He gives a beautiful example. I want everyone to listen. He says, the sun, the rays of the sun hit many different places. There is one ray of the sun here, another there, another there, another there. However, there are some places where 3 rays of the sun come together and accumulate. Or there are some places where 6 or 7 rays come together and accumulate. And those places have greater light intensity. Of course, if there is 1 ray of the sun hitting that place, but 10 are there, that place will be more radiant. He says, in the same way, the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is everywhere. However, the spirit of the Ahlul Bayt is stronger at their shrines. Which is why the spirit of Imam Hussein is with us. However, at the shrine of Imam Hussein, his spirit is stronger. I mentioned yesterday that I would talk about Sayyid Radi. Yes, I know many of you are tired of hearing about Sayyid Radi. I've mentioned it maybe 10 times, or maybe 5, if that's an exaggeration. Sayyid Radi, as I mentioned, younger brother of Sayyid Murtada, compiler of Nahj al-Balagha. Sayyid Radi, just to tell you about his maqam, it is said that the father of Sayyid Murtada and Sayyid Radi left them a very large library. A huge library was left for them. And there were only 2 inheritors to the library, Sayyid Radi and Sayyid Murtada. And of course they were ulama. If someone came up to one of us that your father left you a library, would spit on his face. Where's the money? But these 2 are ulama. They wanted the library. They had love for books. Inshallah, we can also have love for books. So they decided that, okay, we'll look at the library. We'll split it in 2. You get 1 book, I'll get the other. You get 1 book, I'll get the other. So they begin splitting the library in 2. At the end, there is 1 book left. As I said, if it was one of us, yes, you can take the book. It's okay. These 2 were scholars. They were fighting over it. I want the book. I want the book. I want the book. I want the book. They were fighting over it because they understood knowledge is the greatest thing I can acquire in my life. Sayyid Murtada says, look, I have an idea. Let's give the book to that individual who has never committed a sin in his life. In other words, he was saying, I, Sayyid Murtada, the older brother, have never committed a sin in my life. Give the book to me. Sayyid Radi replied, look at the maqam and the status of Sayyid Radi, the younger brother. He says, I think we should give the book to that person who has never even thought about a sin in his life. Meaning him. Sayyid Murtada says, you win. Take the book. This is Sayyid Radi, who I've mentioned many times. His poetry is famous. It is mentioned, Sayyid Radi, he lived in Baghdad. Baghdad today, you will find, is around 110 kilometers away from Karbala. Till today, on a Thursday night, many of the top ulama will travel all the way from Najaf to Karbala. Not only that, the general public, many individuals will travel from Najaf to Karbala, Baghdad to Karbala, all the different areas, Hilla to Karbala. Why? Because they understand the great status of visiting Imam Hussein's shrine, especially on a Thursday. They said, even though Sayyid Radi, 110 kilometers is not that bad. Even though Sayyid Radi lived in Baghdad, close to Karbala, he only visited Imam Hussein once in his life. People are saying, he's such a great scholar. Ya Sayyid, why don't you visit Imam Hussein? Why don't you go to his qabr? Why don't you do his ziyarah? He said, I will. Wait. One day he leaves. He leaves, he's on a camel or a horse, whatever, there are other people with him. As they get close to Karbala and he sees the palm trees, as you know, Karbala, many palm trees are there. He gets off the horse or the camel, he starts walking. As he starts walking, he sees the dome. As he sees the dome of Imam Hussein, he says that famous line of poetry till today they recite, Karbala la zilti karban wa bala, malaki indaki alul Mustafa. This line of poetry till today recited by many individuals, very famous. He was spontaneously reciting these lines of poetry when he saw the dome. He was a very good poet. Spontaneously he could recite poetry. As he was reciting these verses of poetry, he went to the shrine of the Imam. He was wailing, Ya Hussein. He did the ziyarah. He was crying so loudly, with such great intensity. He fell on the ground. He was crying. After a while, they came to him. Sayyid Radi. They realized Sayyid Radi has passed away. That's why they realized he said, I can only visit Imam Hussein once in my life, because my heart feels too much pain visiting Imam Hussein that I will pass away as soon as I see the shrine. This is this individual who is buried today. He is buried, his brother is buried, his father is buried where? In Karbala. Because His heart had such a great connection with Imam Hussein. He said, I can only bear to visit Imam Hussein once in my life. I can't bear to visit him more than once. This is the heart of the ulama. This is the heart of the ulama and the scholars and the pious people, not just the ulama. The heart and the love they have for Sayyid al-Shuhada. In fact, I will tell you something very interesting, but before that, recite Allah salawat. Request for everyone to please move forward. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is a lot of space. One more, please. Thank you very much. Last year, as we know during the Arba'in walk, last year, there was a scholar who narrates this. He says, we were walking, either we were walking or we were already at Karbala. We saw a small child. Listen to the love that people have for Imam Hussein. He said, we saw a small child. Listen very carefully. We saw a small child. He had a t-shirt on and there was a picture of a man. He was walking and we stopped him. We said, where are you? What's happening? He said 3 days ago or 2 days ago or a few days ago, we left wherever we were staying to go and walk from our home to Karbala. The terrorists of Iraq, they set off a bomb and my father died. This person on my t-shirt is my father. They said, your father has died and you're still coming to Imam Hussein? He died 2 days ago. He died 3 days ago. Listen to his reply. He said, I am going to my master Hussein to tell him what they did to my father. Imagine, this individual, he's a small child. This ma'rifah that this small child has, many of us reach old ages and we don't reach this ma'rifah of Imam Hussein and the message of Imam Hussein. If we want to do ziyarah of Imam Hussein properly, even from London, we can do it if we have ma'rifah of Imam Hussein in our hearts. For the Imam himself says, or we are told to say, in one of the ziyarat, arifan bihaqqihi, that we acknowledge his right, we acknowledge who he is. I'll tell you, this terrorism and etc., when we say Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah from London, our heart should be saying, we say no to oppression. When we say, I bear witness that you brought justice on this earth, we should say no to terrorism and oppression and injustice. In fact, during the first 10 days of Muharram, I used to pass through Edgware Road, not to smoke shisha, but because I was going to some certain majlises in North London, so I'd pass through Edgware Road every day. And I would see certain shops, and whenever I would see them, my heart would shower the shopkeepers with blessings. And I have a photo of what I saw. That the shopkeepers, of course they were Arab, when they would close their shops for the day, or even during the day, the shops would have beautiful banners. And I think we should get one of the banners and put it outside of Hyderi if we can find it. Beautiful banners, which said, Imam Hussein, the revolt against terrorism. The revolt against terrorism and injustice. So that when people say that we are sitting here, the banner outside can show them, we are followers of Hussein ibn Ali, and followers of Hussein ibn Ali are against all types of oppression. The followers of Hussein ibn Ali are against all type of injustice. The followers of Hussein ibn Ali are against all types of terrorism. They may try and stop us. Mutawakkil, Abbasi. How many times did he try and demolish the shrine of Imam Hussein? 10? No. In his life. 10? No. 20? No. 30? No. 47 times he tried to destroy the shrine of Imam Hussein. People said, cut my right hand, cut my left hand, cut my leg. I don't care. Because we understand Imam Hussein, what he has given to us, can we not walk towards his shrine? This is the second. The second is visiting Imam Hussein in Karbala. The third. The third is insha'Allah. Unless some of you, I don't know if you're going to book a flight tonight, but otherwise most of us will be here. And we will be doing the ziyarah of Imam Hussein verbally, reciting the supplication. And when we recite the supplication, we'll try and recite it with ma'rifah, with understanding. Many people have this misconception. Not only that, many people have a complaint. Why is it our supplications are so long? Why is it our du'as are so long? Why is it our ziyarat are so long? My feet are hurting standing up. People have this complaint. If you remember the feet of Sayyida Zainab in Darbar of Sham, your feet won't hurt. Because I mentioned her feet were swollen. We can stand up for 15 minutes, it doesn't matter. Because what they have given us, we can sacrifice this. Many people say, recite the ziyarah quickly, recite the dua quickly, recite the Quran quickly. They haven't understood the essence of this. For example, you find many people, either they get engaged or married. Once they are engaged recently or they have a very new marriage, they'll speak to their wife or their partner for 4 hours, 3 hours. And to be honest, most of it is rubbish. They'll speak for 3 hours, they won't get tired. Whether they are standing, whether they are hungry, whether they are tired, whatever. They will speak and they will enjoy it for 3 hours, 4 hours. You ask them, how can you do this for such a long time? On the internet, on the phone, paying for bills. How? The reply they will give is, because I love that person. So do you not love Imam Hussein? Because the ziyarat is a way in which I talk to my master. Therefore, I should want to elongate it as much as possible. It should not be that I want to cut it quickly. It should be that I love you, Ya Imam. I want to talk to you, so I will recite it with ma'rifah. I will recite it calmly, and I will recite it no matter how long it takes me. And to explain this point further, I give you a famous story of Ayatollah Muqaddas Ardabili rahmatullah alayhi. Within his dream, he sees that there are two people sitting. Dreams, by the way, I've mentioned many dreams. Dreams have a reality. For there's a hadith that ar-ru'ya thalatha. 3 types of dreams exist. Number 1 is those type of dream which are basharatun min Allah. The true type of dream where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me something about the future. For example, the dream of Nabi Ibrahim, the dream of Nabi Yusuf. إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ أَشْرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. That dream was a true dream. Basharatun min Allah. So sometimes, very rarely, we can also see true dreams which are shown to us in the future. For example, I see a dream where I'm doing a certain thing. For example, visiting Imam Hussein's shrine. This may come true in 20 years, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me the good news of this. The second type of dream is from shaitan, where he causes me to have a nightmare, for example, causes me to get scared, causes me to see something haram, for example. The third type of dream is known as adghathu ahlamin, according to the Quran. This is the dream, for example, in the day I ate some dodgy food. In the night, I will just see a dream of me doing something I did in the day. So, for example, in the day I was sitting here. In the night time, I will see myself sitting here. So this dream is the dream that we often have. 90% of our dreams are this third kind, adghathu ahlamin, and they have no sense. However, many of the dreams have truth. Muqaddas Ardabili, Ayatollah Muqaddas says, I saw 2 people were sitting. One was the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the other was Nabi Musa. Rasulullah says, oh Musa. No, Musa says to Rasulullah, who is that? So the Prophet says, ask him yourself. So Nabi Musa, he comes up to Ayatollah Muqaddas, he says, who are you? Ayatollah Muqaddas says, my name is Ahmad Muqaddas Ardabili, I'm from this place, I'm this, I'd have a very big turban, because he would have a very big turban, because he would give many, the cloth that he had on the turban, he would give away to those that were poor. I have a very big turban, I do this, I do that, I'm a teacher, I do this, etc. Musa said, I asked you one question, who are you? You gave me such a long description. He said, oh Musa, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa? What is in your right hand? What did you reply, O Musa? He replied, I have this staff, I do this with that, I do that with this, I lean on it, it gives me food, it gives me protection. He says, O Musa, why did you give such a long answer? Musa replies, because that was the first time I was talking to Allah. I wanted to elongate that conversation as much as I could. Ayatollah Muqaddas says, this is the first time I'm speaking to you. I want to elongate this conversation as much as I could. Then Nabi Musa says, O Prophet, you have said right. For the scholars of your time are like the prophets of Bani Israel. The point here is what? When we want to speak to someone we love or respect, we want to elongate this conversation as much as we can. And so when we recite the ziyarah, it may be long. It isn't actually long. But some people say that, for example, Ziyarat Waritha is long, Ziyarat Ashura is long. No, they're short. However, when we read, if we read with true ma'rifah and understanding, it will feel like we are connecting with the Imam. Even if we are stuck in South London, we can be there. We can be there in presence and in heart. The third, that doing the ziyarah by reading the ziyarah instead of going there. The fourth I said, and this is the most important part of our lecture today, is the excellency and the fadila of actually visiting Imam Hussein. For you find that the ulama mention, I won't mention these today because it's very long, that there are 10 certain specialities that Karbala has. Makkah may have one of these. Medina may have 2 of these, but Karbala has all 10. One of those is that, for example, Karbala is mentioned 2 places in one ayah. It is mentioned, Buq'atul Mubarakah, the blessed spot. Not only that, we understand that Adhab of Qabr If I visit Imam Hussein, there is no adab. There is no questioning. And before I mention any further, recite aloud salawat for me. There is no questioning for that person who is buried in Karbala. Not only that, Allama Halli rahmatullah alayh. Not only are his books used today, for example, he has a book, Bab Hadi Ashar. Bab Hadi Ashar is a book on Islamic theology, still studied in the Hawza today. Not only that, many of his books, many of his works are used today. He has a analysis on certain books. Allama Halli, the great scholar, when he passed away, he comes in a dream to his son, Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen. I'm sure you've heard of Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen before. Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen, it is said he became a mujtahid before even his father. His father became a mujtahid maybe at the age of 11. Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen became a mujtahid at the age, some say, of 9. Some of us can't even read and write properly at the age of 9. He was a mujtahid, imagine. Allama Hilli, he says, I came into my dream. After I passed away, I came into the dream of my son Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen. We began talking. He said, Father, what was akhirah like? What was your questioning like? He said, oh my son, during the questioning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked me, what have you brought me? What have you brought for me? I said, look, I was a mujtahid. I taught 300 students, 400 students, 500 students, 1,000 students. I wrote this book, I wrote that book. But the voice came back that Allah wasn't impressed. It wasn't a sweet voice. It wasn't a happy voice. It wasn't a voice of contentment. I was a bit scared that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I've given him everything that I had and he's still not happy. Then I said, I wrote the book Al-Fayn. Al-Fayn in the Arabic language means 2,000. Because, and there's a very interesting story of how Al-Fayn was written. Al-Fayn, it has 1,000 accusations against Amir al-Mu'mineen that someone wrote. And Allama Hilli writes 1,000 answers to that. So 1,000 accusations. 1,000 answers equals 2,000. Which is why the book is called Al-Fayn. When he says Al-Fayn, Allah was happy. In other words, showing us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be happy with us if either in our hearts we have wilayah of Ali bin Abi Talib or we try and protect the authority and wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. All of the other things were left when he said Al-Fayn, because it was linked to his holy Imam and protecting the Imam's status. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was happy. Says, and the second thing I said, oh my son Fakhrul Muhaqqiqeen, I said, Ya Allah, I visited Imam Hussein and I did his ziyarah on the day of Arba'in. In other words, a scholar like Allama Hilli, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with what? Ziyarat of Arba'in. If we also, inshallah, next year, every single one of us, inshallah, will be able to visit Imam Hussein on the day of Arba'in. Inshallah. When we go, inshallah, we can say, the sharaf that Allama Hilli had, maybe I will also have. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put everything aside and said, all I want is Al-Fayn, number 1. Number 2, your visitation of the shrine. And you find there are so many different anecdotes with regards to visiting the shrine of Imam Hussein. There is one beautiful one, because you find there is a certain couplet in Arabic, which not only is recited by many individuals, you will find it written all over the world. All over the world, when you find replicas of the shrine of Imam Hussein, you'll find this piece of poetry there. إِذَا شِئْتَ النَّجَاةِ فَزُرْ حُسَيْنًا. If you want salvation, visit Hussein. It's 4 lines or something like that. The gist of it is the person writes that if the dust of the visitors of Imam Hussein is on your body, the fire will not be able to touch you. Okay, now I'll explain. Because there's a story behind this. Sheikh Hilli, rahmatullah alayhi, not Allama Hilli, this Sheikh, he lived maybe 200 years ago. It is said about his parents that they were nawasib, they were nasibi. They were haters of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim as-salam, complete haters. It is said that they were unable to have children. So, the mother, she said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she did another that, Ya Allah, if you allow me to have a child, I will teach him to kill the zawar of Imam Hussein. Because they were nawasib, they were haters of Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, if you allow me to have a child, I will teach him to kill the visitors of the shrine of Imam Hussein. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives her a child. Now the father, in other words her husband, was the governor of a certain town which was north of Baghdad. The child was born, he grew up. When he was strong and fit and healthy, the mother said, okay, now it's time for you to fulfill your promise. So he went to an area known as Musayyib, which is north of Baghdad, in between Baghdad and Karbala, when the visitors of the shrine of Imam Hussein wanted to go there, to Imam Hussein's shrine, they would go, many of them, through Musayyib. Because in Musayyib there was a certain bridge. And so, for example, visitors that were coming from Syria, they would go through Musayyib, through the bridge, or from Yemen, Musayyib, etc. He said, it will be easier for me to kill these Zawar if I stand near the bridge. When I see certain Zawar, I will kill them, attack them. So he was standing there. He could see that there was a group that had just completed the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, were coming back from Karbala, through that bridge of Musayyib. He says that I was there, I saw them. They were walking very fast. I tried to catch up with them. I tried to catch up so I could attack them and kill them and take their lives. However, they got away. What happened is that there was a lot of dust flying around from their feet and from their bodies. That dust completely covered me. As they were walking, that dust of theirs, the zawar of Imam Hussein, that completely covered my body. I brushed it off a bit, there was still dust left. Of course, it was hot, it's Iraq, etc. I was tired from running. I said, I'll sleep for a bit or I'll sit here. I'll wait for the next group, then I'll kill them. He says, I went to sleep. Listen very carefully. I went to sleep. I saw it is the day of Qiyamah. The angels are holding on to me. They throw me into the fire. As they throw me into the fire of hell, the fire of hell suddenly retracts and says, oh, angels will not touch him. The angel says, why? He says, because the dust of the pilgrims of Imam Hussein is on his body. So, Allah. The dust of the pilgrims of Hussein is on his body, therefore the fire of hell will not touch this individual. So what do the angels do? They wash his whole body. They wash his whole body. Again, they throw him into the fire again retracts. Still we cannot touch him. The fire of hell cannot touch this individual. For some of that dust has gone into his heart. Never will the fire of hell be able to touch him. He says, I woke up, I realized, I ran towards Imam Hussein. I understood what the maqam of this man is. The wilayah of Hussein ibn Ali and Ali ibn Abi Talib and all of the 12 Imams was in my heart, and he became such a great scholar. Because he understood, إِذَا شِئْتَ النَّجَاةِ فَزُرْ حُسَيْنَ. If you want salvation, go to Imam Hussein. You can go to Imam Hussein from here. You can visit Imam Hussein from here with your heart. But salvation will be what you get if عَارِفًا بِحَقِّهِ. If you have acknowledged the right and the status of Imam, the fire of hell will not touch you. And there have been so many examples of individuals. An example is given. There is a scholar by the name of, he's passed away, Ayatollah Wahid Bahbahani, Rahmatullah alayh, Sheikh Murtada Ansari, Sheikh Ja'far Kashif al-Ghita. These are big names. These were all his students. He was a great scholar. One day in his dream, he saw Imam Hussein salawatullahi wa salamu alayh. And he says, Ya Imam, if someone is buried in Karbala, will the angels ask them questions? The Imam says, which angel has the courage to ask anyone questions while I will be there present? An example is given. If there's a Q&A session, and Ayatollah Khuy is sitting here, Ayatollah Sistani is sitting here, another Marja is sitting here, any other alim, will he do Q&A? No, because he knows these great ulama are here. No one will dare to ask a question or answer. In the same way, when Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi will be there, no angel will dare to come to that person's grave. Not only that, okay, I can't be buried in Karbala, I can be buried here in South London, for example. Still, what can I do? The ulama say that there was a woman, she was a fornicator. Not only was she a fornicator, she taught her children to fornicate. So she was engrossed in sin, so were her children. When she died, when she passed away, they buried her. The ground did not want to accept her because she was so filthy. They buried her. The ground, after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, it pushed her back out. In other words, it wasn't letting her be buried. Again, they tried to bury her. Again, she was pushed out. Again, they tried to bury her. Again, she was pushed out. They went to one of the imams, either the 5th or the 6th. And they said, look, what should we do? One of the imams said, even though she is a sinner, take a bit of khaka shifa. Put it on her head and her hands. Because as we know, we can't put khaka shifa on areas where it will be disrespect. We mix a bit with the kafur. Put it on her head or her hands. As they did so, the ground suddenly accepts her body. Because Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi, because he gave everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed that the dust of the shrine of Imam Hussein, no, the dust of Karbala, within it is shifa for every single one of us. Within it is Allahumma. And as I've mentioned in the last 3 nights, I won't take too much of your time because there will be matam and you are tired, etc. The time is such now, the night of the 40th, that yesterday when we mentioned, there may have been a bit of confusion. Yesterday when we spoke about Eid al-Zahra, it was the heads of the killers that was given to them, to Imam Sajjad, etc. So when Hazrat Mukhtar killed many of the killers, the heads were given to Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Zainab Abidin, which is why they smiled, which is why we do Eid al-Zahra. The heads of the shuhada were brought to them during Arba'een, because Arba'een signifies the way in which Sayyidah Zainab won. Victory of Sayyidah Zainab is shown through Arba'een. Imagine that there's a group of people surrounded by men, strong men, with weapons, who are soldiers. Within the caravan, the group of people, there are women and children. Is it possible for that small caravan and group to survive? Is it possible for it to survive? No. The only reason till today Islam has survived is for Sayyidah Zainab. And today, or tomorrow, tonight, was when she was told that Zainab, you have been victorious. Zainab, you have won. It is mentioned, if we can turn that off, it is mentioned that Yazid, what happened with Yazid is that many individuals surrounded his palace. And they said that we realized who those personalities were, Yazid. When they first came, no one knew. No one knew that ayah of Mawadda is them. Ayah of Walaya is them. Ayah of Mubahala is them. No one knew. After a while, people realized they covered the whole darbar of Yazid with swords. We realized who they were. We realized that they were the holy Ahlul Bayt. Let them go, or we will kill you. As I mentioned before, Zainab was the reason why there was a revolt against Yazid, Sayyidah Zainab. It is mentioned that Hinda, the wife of Yazid, after Karbala she split with Yazid, but she was still in the same area. She comes into the room of Yazid in the night. It's the middle of the night. Yazid is sitting on his bed. Middle of the night, he's awake, he's worried. Sweat may have been drizzling from his forehead. She said, Yazid, why can't you sleep? He replies, the Prophet of Islam came in my dream. And he said, Ya Yazid, O accursed, what have the women and children of my family done that they are in the jail, that they are in the zindan, that they are in the prison? Release them. It is said that Yazid then sends a certain person to go to the darbar of Sham, to go to the zindan of Sham. In the zindan of Sham, the servant of Yazid enters. As the servant of Yazid enters, he says, Sayyidul Sajjad, Sayyidul Sajjad, Yazid wants to see you. Sayyidul Sajjad's body is covered, his hands are chained, his back is bent, his hairs are grey. He goes slowly towards Yazid, when suddenly Sayyidah Zainab comes. She says, oh my son Sajjad, I will not let you go to Yazid alone, for I made a promise to my brother. I made a promise that never would I leave you alone. Oh Sajjad, oh Sajjad, take me with you, I won't let you go alone. Sajjad says, no, my auntie Zainab, no, my mother Zainab, Yazid is not going to kill me. Rather, there is good news from Yazid. Yazid. Sayyid al-Sajjad enters into the darbar of Yazid. He is covered in chains. Yazid says, listen to what Yazid says. Yazid says, undo the chains on the body of Sajjad. These chains have been on the body of Sajjad for 1 year. These thick chains have been on the body of Sajjad for 1 year. As the chains come off his neck, maybe he will remember the neck of his father Hussein. As the thick chains come off his neck, maybe he will remember the neck of the 6-month-year-old. What does Yazid say? Yazid says, we are ready to release you from the prison. Are you ready? Sayyid al-Sajjad says, I will ask my auntie Zainab. He goes back to the auntie Zainab. He says, Ya Zainab, Ya Ammati, they have allowed us to be released. She says, no. The first condition is that we have a house where we are able to lament and say, Wa Husaina. The first condition is that these chains are undone so we can beat our chest. For that chest on which Shimar was sitting, so that we can beat that chest which was covered in arrows. The second thing we want is all of the things which were looted. We want back. We want the earrings back. We want the clothes back. We want the jewelry back. The third thing we want is we want the head of Hussein. We want the head of Abbas. We want the head of all of the shuhada. Understand, Zainab is thirsty, yet Zainab does not ask for water. Rather, she asks to commemorate the death of her brother Hussein. As they enter into the house, the women start to shout, Wa Husaina, Wa Husaina, Wa Husaina. One by one, different things are brought forth. When the shirt of Imam is brought forth, Wa Ghariba, they see the shirt of Aba Abdullah. Then certain heads are brought forth. The 18-year-old head of Ali al-Akbar is brought forth. The head of Qasim is brought forth. Farwa takes the head of Qasim. The head of Abbas. The head of Abbas is brought forth. Kulthum takes the head of Abbas. Then two small heads come. Two small heads are brought forth. Zainab looks at the two small heads. She puts them onto the side. Then one head comes forth. Everyone stands up. They say, Wa Husaina. The head of Hussein has come. Look at the head of Hussein. Look at the head of Hussein. Look at the wounds on the head of Hussein. Two Syrian women say, who are these two children? No one is near their heads. Has their mother died? Has their mother died? Zainab turns around. She is crying. I am the mother of Aun and Muhammad. I am the mother of Aun and Muhammad. I am the mother of Aun and Muhammad. How can the mother of Aun and Muhammad cry for Aun and Muhammad when the mother of Hussein cannot cry for Hussein? I will continue to cry until I have cried for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, until I have cried for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. As they lament, as they say, the kafila goes, jab kafila nikalta hai. The kafila goes, kafila jab nikalta hai रहलत के लिए. काफिला जब निकलता है, ज़ैनब कहती है, क्या कहती है? ज़ैनब कहती है, मेरी एक अमानत है बाकी, जिंदान शाम में वो अमानत है. सज्जाद पूछते हैं, क्या अमानत? ज़ैनब जाती है, रबाब वहां बैठी है. ज़ैनब कहती है, ये सुकैना का कब्र, सुकैना की ये अमानत है, सुकैना को हम छोड़ेंगे नहीं. भाई हुसैन आपकी अमानत में पूरी नहीं कर पाई. भाई हुसैन, लेकिन मैं जा रही हूँ. ज़ैनब कहती है, मैं जा रही हूँ यहाँ से. या सकीना, मैं शाम वापस आऊंगी, मैं शाम वापस आऊंगी. ख्याल रखना तुम्हारा, ख्याल रखना तुम्हारा. अब कौन रखेगा ख्याल सकीना? शायद दो हाथ निकले हुए होंगे अब्बास के वो हाथ. हाय सकीना, मैं अब
قحبان. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله وسلم. يا حسين يا حسين.